out your hose and grab your can. We're about to integrate another Pest Geek podcast. Hi, everybody. Frank Hernandez here, and welcome to the Pest Geek podcast, bringing you the latest information on pests, products, and politics from today's leading industry sources to help you start, manage, and grow your pest control business.
Hey, welcome back. Welcome back to another edition of the Pest Geek podcast. I am Frank Hernandez, your Pest Geek, here discussing all things pest. We want to remind our audience to join in on the revolution. That's right, join in on the conversation, be part of the society. Pest Geek Podcast Listeners Group on Facebook. And we're on YouTube, we're on the web, pestgeekpodcast.com. Check out there the notes, everything that we put into the podcast. They're all on there. And now for today's topic.
Hey, welcome back. Welcome back to another edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. I am your host, Frank Hernandez, and we're going to be discussing Culex mosquitoes. That's right, it's mosquito season. As soon as those temperatures rise above 70 degrees, they start coming out and they start populating. And we're going to be covering Culex mosquitoes today. And Culex mosquitoes are probably the most prevalent in the U.S. There's around the world, there's about 1,000 species of Culex mosquitoes. In the U.S., we got about 12 of them, about a dozen. In Florida alone, we have 9 out of the 12 available in the U.S. So it is one of the big problematic mosquitoes here that we have to deal with. And Culex is known as the common house mosquito. Okay, it is common in the U.S. because there's at least one type of Culex mosquito found in every state. It has a metamorphosis of egg, larva, pupa, and adult. It doesn't have it does have a complete metamorphosis: egg, larva, pupa, and adult. They usually feed at night. Typically, it's going to be a night feeding mosquito. So if you've got a customer saying they're getting bit in the afternoon, they're getting bit in the morning, most likely they don't have Culex mosquitoes. They could have Aedes, maybe Anopheles, but not Culex mosquitoes. They also, the pregnant or gravid females take flight at night, especially right at about twilight. So whenever that sun starts to crescent out and over the horizon, it's pretty much gone. At that twilight period is when they start to go out and look for places to oviposition their eggs and bite. So that they're going to spend most of the night doing that, finding places to lay their eggs, and that's what they're doing there. They prefer the tropics, so they're very, very common in the tropics. Like I said, Florida has 9 out of the 12 Culex species in the U.S. that are most common. They survive overwintering in the north by hibernating. I mean, you can have them pretty much, if we've had like the last, 5-7 years where temperatures never dropped below the 60s. This year we've had a couple of drops into the 50s, but pretty much the temperature started going at about 75 and 85 degrees, and you're going to have them breeding. Culex mosquitoes like to hide during the day in sheltered areas. If there's boxes outside, things that they can, hide in, that's what they're going to do. They, believe it or not, they prefer to bite birds and livestock than people. But when the populations become really heavy, they're going to bite people. And that's how we get the transmission of diseases, is by them biting birds that, have infections and then becoming a vector and transmitting it to us. The entire life cycle of this mosquito, on average, no matter which species, you're looking about 10 to 14 days. From egg, larva to pupa and adult, you're looking at 5, 7, 10 days. They don't live that long, and so you're looking at an entire cycle of 2 weeks. They're transmitters of West Nile virus, St. Louis encephalitis, Western equine encephalitis. They're also vectors for dog heartworm. They are good flyers. They fly long distances, believe it or not, compared to Aedes. You're talking about 3/4 of a mile to over 1.5 miles of Culex mosquitoes will fly from their zone. So, you're trying to control a problem that the source might be a mile and a half away. And you're trying to figure out. I just had a call this week. I posted it on my personal page. A customer calls me and says, I've got a franchise here. They're doing my mosquito. They stink. I fired them. I want to know what you're going to spray that's much stronger because, they can't control the mosquitoes. He tells me I've had mosquito control out here, and what I have is the Asian tiger mosquito, which is, the Aedes albopictus. Well, I said, the chances are if they're spraying and you've got all these people out there already and you have all this information, something isn't adding up. So I go and I say, okay, I pull the property info. I look at that property on a map. The guy is surrounded by man-made lakes. One of them is so small it looks like a drainage ditch. The mosquitoes are breeding all around him. He's on every corner. He's on a corner lot. Across the street, there's a man-made lake. Across the other street on the other side, there's like 7 little man-made lakes. And across the street on the left side, there's a huge man-made lake. And he wants to get with a misting service every 3 to 4 weeks. Not going to get control. He needs to go to a misting system. That sometimes, misting isn't going to be right for every client. Spraying barrier services are not going to be right for every client. He's got a property that's pretty clean, nothing around it. There's no drains, but he's got all these lakes around him. They're man-made and they're breeding there. So there's not a whole lot. I mean, he's literally across the street. If you got a 1.5 miles, the studies are showing, they can go up to 3 kilometers or like 1.86 miles, almost 2 miles from where they're breeding. So the source might not be at your customer's site. I mean, you got a customer that has nothing but lawn. You can spray for mist for mosquito. If all they got is lawn, you're not going to get any control for that client. The client thinks that because we spray, mosquitoes don't breed in lawns. It's not common unless, this particular mosquito, especially in areas where they have drains, like, they like depositing their eggs in all types of water sources. This is what makes it a very difficult mosquito to control. We're talking about in sewage systems. Okay, if there's an open sewage system, they're going to breed in there. They're going to deposit their eggs, especially if it's mixed with rainwater. Catch basins, waste tires, buckets, rain barrels, even wastewater treatment sites. They're going to be breeding there. You got a drainage system where you have on the side of a highway, you got roadside ditches, and all of a sudden you get a bunch of rain, and it doesn't drain for 10 or 14 days, and that soil is still moist. That's enough time for them to deposit the eggs, for them to breed, especially like on surfaces where there's organic matter. So they can, if it rains in a wide open area and that area floods, and that soil stays moist, they can hatch in that moist soil as long as it's 10 to 14 days of that being wet. They'll breed there. So I got clients that live in back of I-95 or the turnpike, and when it rains, that whole area floods for weeks, and we're spraying their property. Well, the mosquitoes aren't coming from their property; they're coming across the street from that water just sitting there, and they're getting mosquitoes, and they're complaining that we spray and they got mosquitoes. This is the reality of what we need to educate our clients on, because what's going on is you've got a bunch of salespeople going out there selling contracts for mosquito control that they're not going to be able to get the control. And the customers are calling me constantly, I bought it from this franchise. I bought it from this national brand. And, when you got salespeople and they're on commission and they need to sell contracts, I mean, that's the reality of the industry. They need to sell contracts, and, they're calling us, and I'm like, no, we're not going to take you on as a client. The reality is you're probably going to need if you're in that situation, you're going to need a mosquito misting system that mists 3 to 4 times a day to keep that mosquito population down. And you're still going to have to cover up, and you're still going to have to wear repellent. It isn't something that's instant when we're dealing with a mosquito that can breed pretty much anywhere. I mean, you're talking about in rice fields, marshes, swamps. This thing will breed in salt water. It will breed in brackish water. It will breed in fresh water. We've got the eggs. They do them in rafts. So 250 to 300 eggs will generally hatch in 2 to 3 days. That's the typical of an Aedes mosquito. So the water, all of a sudden, people are like, no, it hasn't been raining a lot. It rained 15 days ago, and it hasn't rained since, and that water is still there. People don't understand this. And customers, this is our job to educate our customers to help understand. Listen, you can't do it once a month everywhere, and it's not going to work for everywhere. Here in Florida, the reality is we sell mosquito on a biweekly basis if it's synthetic. If it's natural, 100% natural, we're like at 5 days weekly to get it under control. And we've got other things. We're using IGRs and we're using Synergist, and we're using microencapsulated products, and we're using surfactants. So we sell an ultra premium service to our client when we have to add all those products. And the biggest mistake I see in the industry when it comes to mosquito control is that people don't want to put the money, especially technicians, companies, for IGRs. It is vital that you use an IGR for mosquito control. You can't just use bifenthrin. A lot of guys are getting away with 68 cents of bifenthrin, spraying yards and saying, I don't know why I'm not getting control. The reason is you're not controlling the larvae. You need to control the larvae. You need to have something out there that controls that larvae, not the adult mosquito. The adult mosquito is secondary. And yes, a bifenthrin could have an IGR effect on surface waters of plants. If you got plants that hold water or places that hold water, you're going to have 7 days tops with bifenthrin that has some insect growth regulator abilities. It can destroy the eggs and the larvae in there, but 7 days, that's it. So you need to add insect growth regulators to your mix to get the long-term control. You can't cheap out on this. Well, the customers won't pay for it. Well, look, the customers need to understand. If they want the control, there's a cost to that control, and we can't put the bill. I mean, it's just a reality. You got to add the products that are making a quality service. Like I said, we're selling a super premium service to our clients, and we're getting that 14 to 21 days. And I go to clients and I say, look, let's do an application. I'm going to be back here at night during the day. In 14 days, we see what kind of control we got. And all of a sudden, it starts to decline after that. And they're calling me at the middle between of 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah, we just started getting the bites. It lasts 2 weeks, 2.5, 3 weeks. So then we designed that program. It's okay, you're going to have to be in your area to get the control. You're going to have to be at 2 weeks. If you're in your area, you're going to be at 3 weeks. You might get away with it over in the winter, once a month in the winter. We're spraying once a month in the winter on a lot of properties. I got properties that are near the water. They're waterfront property near the ocean. We're spraying every 14 days, year round. We're not getting a break because we got so many different species of mosquitoes, and we have the conditions, the subtropical conditions, tropical conditions sometimes that these mosquitoes like. So, we're looking at species found, the most common are Culex pipiens and Culex quinquefasciatus or fasciatus. That is the most common in the U.S. that is going. We also have our Tersalis, Restons, Nigropalpus, Salinarius, and Erectius. In California, Stigmatosoma, Soma, yeah. And here in Florida, we got Biscinaceus, Pelosis, and Teratans, and Declarator. So those are the 12 most common, but the one that's really a problem, the two, is quinquefasciatus, Culex pipiens. The two of those are the ones that are covering most of the United States, especially in the South. The quinquefasciatus is the most common along all the way, as far as Virginia, all the way across to California, covering all of Texas. That covers pretty much all of the southern United States. And then north of that, I think about 39 degrees, if I'm not mistaken, between 36 and 39 degrees. Then you got Culex pipiens. And that is the two most common mosquitoes. Now, the problem with these is one is known as the southern house mosquito, and then the other one is known as the northern house mosquito. And what happens in between the north and the south is we get what is known as the Culex pipiens complex. We get a hybrid, molestus. That is been found as far south as Louisiana and as far north as Chicago with this hybrid, because the deal with Culex pipiens and Culex quinquefasciatus is that they can breed together and they get a hybrid. So those two can interbreed without a problem. And that is a major problem of controlling Culex. Other mosquitoes that are popular, the Erraticus, is, this mostly found southeastern, southern part of the United States. They've been found in rice fields in Arkansas. Culex nigripalpus, that one is found in Florida, Alabama, South Carolina, North Carolina, Mississippi, Southwest Texas, mostly the southwestern part of the U.S. Stigmatosoma is common in California and on the Pacific coast. Then we got Culex tarsalis over there in California. They got Culex pipiens, quinquefasciatus. They got stigmatosoma and erythrorax in California. And then you got Culex salinarius, and they live both near the Atlantic and the Gulf Coast. They can survive. They love to breed in salt water. You got brackish water, saltwater marshes, roadside ditches, and what are known as cattail bogs, in plants. So any plant that holds water is susceptible to mosquitoes, especially Aedes and Culex. Culex tarsalis, Mississippi. It's found on the east part too. All of these are problems with equine encephalitis with horses getting that, and they're starting to get vaccines for those now. Heartworm on your pets is a big problem, so people need to protect the pet from heartworm, because they can, a lot of the Culex mosquito likes to bite animals. So horses, cows, they get birds, and this is how they're transmitting a lot of these diseases and become the vectors of them. So I've got a lot of notes also, by the way, on this, good links to good material, good government source materials, NIH source. You can go ahead and get all those links at the website if you go to the page for this podcast. So guys, hey, look, it's been real. I hope you guys have enjoyed this series on mosquitoes, and I wish you a pestacular day.
We hope you have enjoyed this edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. Until next time, have a pestacular day.
Thank you for listening to the Pest Geek Podcast. If you have enjoyed the Pest Geek Podcast, please give us a rating, write a review, or subscribe to the channel. You can join the Pest Geek Society by visiting pestgeekpodcast.com. Thank you for listening. See you next time.